Advanced Math. We're going to work today on representing numbers and their opposites. What's the opposite of a number? So go ahead and write this as the title for your next page in your math notebook. When you have done that, close it up, unpause, and concentrate with me. So speaking of opposites, let's make our connect today be about opposites. Probably learned about this in, kindergarten. You probably are pretty good at opposites, and you probably know that the opposite of day is night. And you probably know that the opposite of short is tall. Good review. But do you know what the opposite of 4 is? Does 4 even have an opposite? So, when we come back to that, let's also connect back to something else we've done the other day. We started talking about positive and negative numbers and what they mean in our last mini lesson. And so I want to make sure I kind of go back and review that with you. So remember that we talked about situations when you see them. So in temperature, negative temperatures are temperatures below 0, and positive temperatures are temperatures above 0. And in dolphin rides, let's say for instance, another possibility is that sometimes we use negative numbers to represent sea level. So if you jump in the air and you're on your dolphin and you're 35 feet above sea level, and then you can also dip down, but if you're below the water, you're still 30 feet from the top, but you're negative 30 feet from the top. That's another situation where negative numbers come into play. All right, so that aside, I want to talk about different ways we represent numbers and their opposites. The concept of an opposite of a number is actually very simple, even though it sounds weird. So it says represent the number 4 and its opposite using 3 ways: a number line, symbols, and colored counters. So when it gets to using positive and negative numbers in math, we need to have some different ways to show and talk about them so that we can do a good job representing our problems and making sense of them. So the first thing you need to know is, once we know about negatives, we know about opposites. The opposite of the number 4 is negative 4. It's just that simple. And I'll show you where this comes from in a sec. So I'm going to show you 3 ways to represent this. So the first thing to do, let's represent it on the number line. So forever and ever and ever, I can't tell you how many mini lessons I've done for you, and I've drawn number lines, and I always say a good number line starts at 0. Well, not anymore, because back in the day, 0 was the lowest number, the least possible number, but it's not anymore. So actually, most of the time starting now, a good number line has 0 in the middle. And we can represent values greater than 0. These are the natural numbers, I think I call them. And we can represent numbers that are less than 0, values that are less than 0. So now 0 is not our lowest value, it's kind of our middle value. We've got all these numbers on the other side. So on a number line, I would just represent 4 here. Put a point on the number 4 on the number line. And I would represent its opposite here, negative 4. Negative 4 is the opposite of 4. And what we mean when we say opposites and how positive and negative numbers work, is you'll notice if you start at 0, they're the same distance away from 0. This is 4 units away from 0. And if I look at the opposite of it, that is also, a negative number is also 4 units away from 0. So positive and negative numbers, they represent the same amount. Like this is 4 and this is 4, but they represent the opposite direction. We talked about that in like playing a board game where you go forward or backwards, or football where you go forwards or backwards. temperature where you're above 0 or you're below 0. So like 4 degrees is the same distance from 0 as -4. They're just in the opposite direction. So 4 and -4 in the number line, you don't have to draw that every time you show the opposite. You just have to do that. That shows 4 and its opposite. So that's one way to do it. Another time, a lot of the time, especially when we start adding and subtracting and multiplying with positive and negative numbers, what you'll see me do is I'll just use symbols. So I'll represent 4 with 4 positive symbols and -4 with 4 negative symbols. Just to show, again, they have the same quantity, they have the same amount, they're just different signs or different directions. Here, same quantity, same amount, just different directions. So that's a second way I often do it with symbols. And then a third way you'll often see, maybe, books or problems represent positive and negative numbers is very similar to the symbols, but they'll use counters with different colors. So like for instance, they might do 4 with, 4 yellow counters, typically would be yellow, and then -4 would be 4 red counters. So if I had a problem to deal with, this would represent, 4 degrees above 0, 4 degrees below 0, or 4 moves forward, 4 moves backwards, or 400 feet above sea level, 400 feet below sea level. So that's a third way you'll often see positive numbers, negative numbers represented. All right, simple enough. Let's do one in your notebook. Open it up. And let's do this one. Let's say represent the number -6 and its opposite using a number line, symbols, and colored counters. All right, so the first thing to know, opposite, I guess I need to write this down. The opposite of a number is the number that is the same distance from 0 or the same quantity but the other direction. So the number -6, its opposite is 6. And 6, its opposite is -6. They're opposites of each other. All right, so that's the first thing to know. You have to know 6 and -6 and its opposite. -6 and 6 are opposites. They are opposites because number line's typically a good starter. On a number line, 6 and -6 are the same distance from 0, just in opposite directions. That's where that word comes from. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. And so when I look at them, there is 6, and there is -6. I'm going to draw this, I want you to know, but you don't. This is it. This is representing 6 and -6 in the number line. You just put a point where they are. I often just, if you want to do it to get the idea, this is 6 units from 0, and this is 6 units from 0. Same amount, opposite direction. You do not have to write this every time you represent the numbers. But just so you get the idea, that's what I mean when I say opposite direction. They're the same distance, opposite direction. Okay? So that's one way, is with a number line. I don't have a lot of space, so I'll squeeze it in up here. Another common way is with symbols. A lot of times, if I deal with -6, you'll see me represent it with 6 negative signs, and I'll deal with its opposite with 6 positive signs. All right, simple enough. Just show -6 and 6. And then the third way, not always, but a lot of times, I won't do this as often, but a lot of times, if you see like a video or something like that with negative numbers involved, they'll show positive numbers with yellow counters and negative numbers with red counters. So this would be like, I guess I'm kind of backwards here, right? -6, 6. Usually yellow's positive. I'm not sure why that is the custom. I like that. There are probably other ways that they get represented, but these are three main ones that I think you'll see the most. And they kind of give you an idea how they work, right? Same quantity, different color, or same quantity, different signs, or same quantity, different directions. That's how they work. So that's how opposites work, and that's different ways to represent numbers on the number line and their opposites. And I think that covers it. So once you've got good notes taken and you feel